On this episode of Locked On Lightning, the Bolts season is now over. They fall in Game 5 to the Florida Panthers. We'll break down the game, as well as could we possibly see the end of Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay? All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Locked On Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, obviously we are talking about tonight's loss to the Panthers in Game 5, ultimately ending the Lightning's season. We talk about the big storyline, obviously, as the ESPN broadcast crew made a big deal about all game. Steven Stamkos' time in Tampa Bay, could it be coming to an end? We talk about that, as well as looking towards the offseason. So tonight's game, obviously not the result that we wanted. Definitely not in the fashion that we would have imagined. Maybe some Lightning fans actually did, who knows. But ultimately, this was probably one of the most frustrating games I've seen the Lightning play I will say playoff game that I've seen the Lightning play in a very long time. Probably the most frustrating one that we have seen since we started this podcast. And it's just one of those things where going in, you know that the opportunities were going to be limited for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Some listeners out there, and you know who you are, will not appreciate this, but some of us realistic hockey fans, as well as fans of this team, know that coming into this series, the odds were very much up against the Lightning. The Florida Panthers are a very good team. And on the Lightning side of things, we saw it all year long, that there was a lot of holes with this team. There were a lot of inconsistencies with this team. Overall, there was just a lot of fires to consistently put out with this team. And the margin of error coming into this series was going to be very low for the Lightning if they wanted to go forward and not only compete but also get past the Florida Panthers. And I said coming into this series that if the Lightning wanted to win this series, they needed to play the way they did in March. And that was a very big thing to ask of this team, considering of what we saw in basically the last month. Ever since they clinched the playoffs, this team has been nothing remotely close to what they were in the month of March. But having said that, tonight's game was as equally frustrating, not only because the Lightning just were not really taking advantages of the opportunities afforded to them when they were able to. I mean, their power play was absolutely atrocious. It was just really, it was really disappointing to see this team play. Just the way their offensive attack was at certain times. How poor their puck possession was in the neutral zone. You kind of would have figured coming into a game with such importance as the one that we had tonight, kind of figured, especially with coming off that big win in Game 4, kind of would have figured that you would have seen a different Lightning team or a better Lightning team. Let's say that. Because, as we all know, and we saw it last year, and we've said this many times throughout the series and over the last couple of days, the longer the Lightning are kept in the series, the better they get. But really, at the end of the day, the Florida Panthers aren't the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's just the facts. At the same time, I will say it was very frustrating tonight having 2 goals taken away. Now, the second one, all right, I could see that. Makes sense. Okay, he was not pushed into the goaltender. Okay, moving on. The first one, I understand why, obviously when in doubt, you give it, you allow it. I said it on Twitter at the time or later on actually, listen, at the end of the day, it isn't an excuse for the Lightning losing this game, but we can't overlook the fact that that goal being overturned pretty much took the wind out of the sails for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's just really frustrating because, regardless of, what the exact wordage of the rule is, I mean, just if you have a sense of what goalie interference is and you look at the replay, and I think we saw every angle that possibly could have been looked at in order to make a definitive decision. And I'm not even trying to say this as someone who's biased, but I'm just looking at it I'm trying to say this from a neutral position. That's not as definite of a goalie interference as you might think. And they have to make the decision in Toronto in the Situation Room based off definitive evidence that the player interfered with the goaltender. Definitive evidence means without a shadow of a doubt. And I don't see that. I don't see, if you gave that to me and said in the moment, what did he interfere with the goaltender? I say yes. But given the fact that the goal was awarded originally to the team, that changes things a little bit. So looking at it afterwards and having to find enough evidence to say that this player interfered with the goaltender's ability to make the save or get in position or whatever, how you want to word it, I don't believe that was there. And that really, really hurt the Lightning. And it's really unfortunate that something like that happens in a game like this, where really every sequence was really valuable for the Lightning, was really important. I'm not at all sitting here and saying that the Lightning were robbed, or the refs did a terrible job, or the Lightning were screwed in any way. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that whatsoever. So I don't want to see anybody in the comment section on YouTube saying that or saying that I am, because that is not what happened. What we saw in this series was one team who was very fine-tuned, very polished, and one team that was barely hanging on by a thread. And on top of that, their star player, who has been there for them all season long, basically took an early vacation. I did not appreciate, as I'm sure some Lightning fans did, I did not appreciate him at the end of the game, and I'm talking about Nikita Kucherov here. I did not appreciate him breaking his stick on the bench. because of really the zero, next to zero contributions he made in this series. Now, if you carry this team in every game or, put up a goal or whatever the case, had a phenomenal performance and you still couldn't propel your team, okay, you could be frustrated, but don't take your frustration out the fact that you did squat in the series out in public. And that's one of the things that I really don't like. And the things that really, when I love Kucherov as a player, I think he has all the talent in the world. I like him as how he is to his teammates because it seems like everybody on this team loves him as a teammate, but it's just the body language at the wrong place at the wrong time, whether it's, the closing seconds of the 2022 Stanley Cup final against Colorado, and he's having some sort of attitude, and even tonight, I mean, throughout this whole series, his body language has sucked. That's what I'm going to say about that. But getting back to really what really matters is that this series was it was frustrating all around. But what I said on the last episode, and I think we could all agree, is the positives. There are two we could take out of this. Is one, Andrei Vasilevskiy seems, by all accounts, to be back. I'm very much looking forward to seeing that more of those performances during the regular season, and who knows, that could potentially be the main difference. The Lightning possibly make the cup playoffs next year because of Vasilevskiy being phenomenally big cattish. And, they get a better playoff spot. And we're sitting here maybe around this time of year talking about a different result. Who knows? And the other one is that it really brings to the surface all the issues that this team has. And really, Julian Brees-Boss can't put the Band-Aid over them. He has to address it, or this team isn't going to go anywhere. 2 straight years in a row, 2 straight first round exits. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, we're going to continue to unpack this series over probably this entirety of this week. We're going to talk about, some of the performances. We're going to talk about, maybe we'll start player grades. Who knows? It might be a little early for that. We're definitely going to talk about some of our favorites going forward in the playoffs because we're still going to talk about the playoffs here. We're going to talk about bandwagons. What bandwagon should the Lightning Bolts Nation jump on? We talk about that as well. But coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about a very sensitive topic, one that I've been talking about over the past month, over really this whole season. Stamkos, now that the season's over and he's set to become a UFA. Is this it? Is this the end of an era in Tampa Bay? I'll tell you why not. And coming up in just a little bit, first, we're going to talk about our first of 2 sponsors, and that is first our friends over at FanDuel. Now, it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we're going to talk about another one of our very good sponsors, and that is our friends over at Policygenius. Now, Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies and their team of licensed experts that is on hand to help talk you through it. You work, your life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from licensed experts on a great support team. They have No incentive to recommend one shirt over the other, so you can trust their guidance. So check life insurance off your to-do list with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day or the night, depending on what time you were listening to this. We are available on Amazon Music, Spotify, and iTunes. We are also on YouTube. Excuse me, I don't know if you can tell, but I already have a cold, as I do basically on a week-to-week basis here. But we're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, and the content don't stop because we'll be coming to you 5 days a week. And then I think I believe it's after the playoffs are done, we'll be going for once the NHL offseason officially ends, we will be going to 3 days a week. So stick around here. We got lots to unpack here on Locked On Lightning, and I definitely don't want any of you to miss out on it because, like I said, just because the Lightning are not in the playoffs doesn't mean we're going to stop talking about the playoffs and watching the playoffs. So keep an eye on that. And also keep an eye out for news about Steven Stamkos, because that's going to be a very big topic of conversation that is definitely going to dominate really Bolts Nation for until we get some definitive answer whether or not he's coming back. So if you've been living under a rock over the last, let's say, since October, so I can't do math right now, it's too late, but basically he's set to become an unrestricted free agent, which means he could sign anywhere he wants. And we both know, we all know that, he still obviously has a lot left on the tank. He definitely showed that in this playoff series, 5 goals. Really carried this team in this series. It probably would have ended a lot sooner if it wasn't for him. And he really surprised me. Even this series, this season, he really did a phenomenal job, especially in those last couple of months of the season. And it's a shame. I don't know how many of you stuck around to watch the end for the handshake line and Lightning players coming off the ice afterwards, and he was right there, and you could tell he was taking it in, and a lot was going through his mind. Even he doesn't know. I know he wants to stay in Tampa. This Tampa Bay is his home. It's all he's ever known. Why go somewhere else? This is his second home, and but you could tell the look on his face. It's one of those things where the uncertainty of it, I'm sure, is frightening for him. But looking at the offseason, we'll talk about that more later on. But contrary to what the commentators on ESPN, Steve Levy and Kevin Weeks, and I love Kevin Weeks. I love all the content he puts out. Steve Levy, I could leave him. I will say, and they're just pushing this out there because they just want to create headlines. But I firmly believe at this point in time that there shouldn't be a doubt that he is going to be back in the Tampa Bay Lightning uniform come the beginning of next season. Like I said, his DNA is too ingrained in this team, and the Lightning franchise is too ingrained in his DNA. It's really, one of those things where, it's almost, it would have to be a really just ridiculously catastrophic, terrible proceedings to negotiations in the offseason, whether it be on Stamkos' side or Julian Boris-Boss, for things to fall apart and him not come back. But he's at this point in his career where, he's made his money. He's accomplished he's accomplished pretty much everything there is to accomplish as a captain, really as a player. And he's, like I said, there's really not much else he needs to go out and do for the rest of his career. I mean, he's a surefire Hall of Famer. He's going to get his number retired. He's definitely going to get a statue in front of Amalie. There's really not much else out there. I mean, he's won 2 cups. He's been to 4. At this point, all it is really is Pat stats. I think he maybe he's going to think in the long run, where do I want to be when I score my 600th career goal? Because if he stays at this pace, he'll get it. 100%. He'll get 600 career goals. But I think that really, and like I said, we'll talk about this on the last segment of the show, but it's one of those things where, Julian Brees-Boss, I'm sure if he hasn't thought about it already, he's definitely thinking about it right now. He's going down his list. He's looking at the players, who he wants back, who are going to be UFAs, even if they are under contract. He's going to find a way to move certain guys to make things work monetarily for Stamkos. And at the same time, I don't think Stamkos is going to want a crazy amount of money. I think he understands and is very aware of the issues that are facing the Lightning. And, he definitely wants to stay here because, stick with what stick with where you're comfortable. And he's very aware that this team can still win, but it's going to take a little sacrifice, whether it be on his end or whatever the case may be. But, this team is in definite need of a retool, like a real retool, not Connor Sherry in the offseason, Calvin DeHaan retools. That's obviously not sustainable, as we have seen. But yeah, I'm sitting here on April 29th, right after the Lightning have been eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs, saying Steven Stamkos will be, without a doubt, in Tampa Bay come October. 100% guarantee it. If you think otherwise, you're blasphemous. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, what are the percentage? I think 100% chance he's going to be back. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's only really a matter of just, money and length, how much he wants to be here for how much. And I'm sure that contract's going to be chock full of incentives. So we'll keep an eye and keep a ear to the grindstone as hopefully more news comes out sooner rather than later. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about looking towards the offseason. What does the summer have in store for the Tampa Bay Lightning? We talk about all that fun stuff coming up in just a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about our last sponsor on today's show, and that is our friends at the Game Time app. Now, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. One of my favorite things is their lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% if they can't find you the lowest price. 100% guaranteed. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So one last time, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day or night, depending on what time you're listening to this episode. And I really want to personally thank you all for making this a very, very enjoyable season. I mean, it sucks that it ended this early, but just especially the last month or so, and all the playoff content that we have rolled out, all that fun stuff. It's really been very enjoyable. This is now my 5th season covering this show, and it just gets so much more fun every single year, and it's all because of you guys, your enthusiasm on social media, just reaching out to me, whether it be on my personal Twitter account at DankyDank, DENKYD8NK. If you want to reach out to me, whether it be off-season questions, draft, all that fun stuff, Stamkos, we have a lot to talk about. Cooch, what are the Lightning's biggest needs this year going into the offseason? Spoiler alert to everything except goalie. If you want to reach out to the show, go ahead. LO_Lightning on Twitter, lockdown_Lightning on Instagram. Reach out to us with questions, comments, concerns, or drop a comment under any video on our YouTube channel. So, looking towards the off season, as much as it sucks, we're not going to see obviously actual hockey games. I think it's one of the most interesting parts of the season because you're really, this is where, and it's so cliche and corny to say this, but it's so true, is that, this is where championships are made. And I would hope this season we are going to see a lot of moving around. I've been seeing some comments on YouTube people saying everybody but Stamkos and Vasilevsky needs to go. And I think that's a little drastic, but at the same time, I get the feeling of where a lot of people are coming from, and I definitely connect with it because it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating in a series like this, especially after the early month of April and March, what we saw, what the potential really was. But it's one of those things where, as badly as this team has played at times this year, I still think that this team is not too far off. I think really what I have said, and we'll dive more into it, because I think that even though some of those picks we'll definitely not see for a couple of years, if at all, I think the draft will be somewhat telling of what is kind of the general aura of direction of where this team is going, because you might see them trade a couple of those picks, maybe for some mid-level guys, or what they're looking for, or vice versa, trading some guys from this team for maybe some future picks, stuff like that. But I'm still firmly in the realm of Dahan, Perbix. Those guys need to go. Sherry needs to go. It's time to move on from Chernak. It's time to move on from, I wouldn't say move on, but I think that it shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to maybe look into shopping Hedman. And obviously you're not going to get an awesome return out of any of this. This is all little pieces to eventually use towards a draft, or, recalibrate your minor league system, because let's face it, I know we all get excited sometimes with some of the things that we hear coming out of Syracuse, but there's really not much to look forward to for the future. There's no help coming soon that is going to make any world of difference, that is going to be the decider between the first round and the second round in terms of how far this team gets in the playoffs. I think that Duclair needs to be brought back 100%. Even though he did have a disappointing series, how he obviously there's that spark there. How he complements other players on this team, not just that first line. His ability to really play with anybody and be successful and make them better, I think, is something you can't pass up. The Lightning already did that with trading away Barclay Goodrow, obviously because of cap constrictions. But I think, as much as those moves were needed to be done in order to move forward, I still think that Julian Brisebois has learned his lesson, and he needs to figure out how to navigate other parts of this team in order to keep things together. Like they said on the broadcast, only 6 members left on this team from the Stanley Cup winning team in 21. So, yeah, they got to figure it out because the window is definitely closing on this Lightning team. Before we know it, Stamkos will be 35. Kucherov will be in his early 30s. Vasilevsky will be in his early 30s. Point will be in his early 30s, and by then, you're looking towards the new generation of the Lightning core. So, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I expect, like I will say over and over again, the Lightning are going to be very aggressive. I look forward to a summer of definitely talking about drafts, definitely looking into more of the general managing side of it. We're definitely going to put on a general manager cap quite a bit this summer on this podcast, probably more than we have before. We're going to look back on the 2004 Stanley Cup winning playoff run because it's the anniversary, of course, of that 20 years. So we'll talk about that. We're going to probably do a series. We did one of the Stanley Cup final against Calgary during the pandemic. We're going to do a new one of that. But if you want to go back and listen to that, you go ahead and do that. And basically what that would entail. And we're going to do also wherever the games are available, if we could do. I'll do everything from the first round all the way to the Eastern Conference final with Philly, all the way to obviously redoing that series against Calgary, as long as the games are available on YouTube. And just so because I want to be able to watch them and also have you watch them if you want to follow along. That's going to be a great series and something I definitely have been wanting to do for quite some time. And also let me know in the comments below because for any topics or any ideas, we definitely have a plethora of ideas here that we want to explore throughout the summer. We're definitely going to try and reach out to some people within and around the organization to get on here. We've had especially if you're a first-time listener of this show, going into your first off-season with us, you could look back. We've had Ross Colton when he was with the Lightning on this team. We had Corey Perry. We had Kenny Albert, the announcer, the hockey announcer. We had Jay Feaster, former Lightning general manager, on the show too, as well as other notable people around the Lightning organization as well. So, we'll see who we get. We haven't scheduled anybody because we didn't know how long the Lightning were going to go into the playoffs, but we definitely going to start that this week, sending out feelers and see who's available when and for how long, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, disappointing end to the playoffs, but you know what? Now the fun, even more fun part begins. Retooling and putting together, hopefully, a winning Lightning team for 2024-25. So, in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.